Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm looking forward for this roundtable today. We will have roughly 1 hour, and we have a lot of subject to cover. I will share an approximate agenda of the session, and then we will be able to start. So at the beginning, we are introducing everyone. Like, this is starting. I'm Mathieu, from a software engineer at the Cardano Foundation. And after the introduction, we'll have the roundtable, which will last for roughly 50 minutes. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. So let's start with the subject then. Who wants to, maybe Alexei, you might want to start. Can you introduce yourself and nested transaction?
Certainly. Hi, everyone. My name is Alexei, and I'm a Ledger team lead. Responsible for leading the team that develops the core of the Cardano that validates the transactions, blocks, and so on. So nested transactions is going to be the feature that we're going to be working on for the foreseeable future. And this is a feature that have been desired for some time, but at least the people that I know that were told me that from the Plutus team, from the management, from the community. And the nested transactions is a functionality that will allow us to do things like Babel fees, like batching. It would allow somebody to, for example, to implement a decentralized exchange without any use of smart contracts, for example. And in a nutshell, it's quite simple. There's going to be a transaction. We'll have a list of sub-transactions which are pretty much full transactions, except they don't have to be balanced. And that's the feature. Yeah.
Thank you. And wants to introduce himself and how they relate to the subject.
I'm Sam Leathers. I'm the product committee chair, and I also work at Input Output Global. So I've been talking with a lot of community members about what the future of Cardano is going to look like. And one of the things that have come up is how nested transactions can be used to do more things than just Babel fees. Yeah, I mean, I'm basically here to kind of give a lot of that community feedback of what nested transactions can be used for, and like Alexei was mentioning, doing like atomic swaps, creating decentralized exchanges, things of that nature. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Sam. Raul?
Hey, everyone. So my name is Raul. I'm the CTO at Fluid Tokens, and I'm related to nested transaction, mostly because at Fluid Tokens, we have released on mainnet our Babel fee implementation uses smart contracts. So it's not directly involving any change to the ledger, but actually in a smart contract way, using oracles like Charlie Tree and Orcfax. And yeah, nice to be here and happy for this discussion.
Happy for you to be here too. Walsh, your turn.
Hi, I'm Welch, go by the name Dominic as well. I'm founder of Compact.io. I've been working with entities developing the Plutus part of their applications, and more recently working on L2s. My connection to SIP 118 is definitely as the outsider. and just reviewing it from the point of view having built on Cardano for the last 3 years. Is this addressing my problems?
Thank you, Walsh. So I guess we can dive in then. So we'll start with this question. So what are nested transactions? What problem does it solve? What are the relations to the current issue we have Cardano, such as contention, batchers, user experience, wallet safety, etc. Maybe. Oh, sorry, Alexei. Just before you go ahead, we have Michele back.
Yeah, sorry guys, I was having some internet problems, but seems to be better now. I'm Michele, founder of Mark Laboratories. And yeah, we're here to discuss nested transaction, bubble fees, and what they can or cannot do.
Welcome, Michele. So let's dive into the subject then. Alexei, you are.
Well, it's going to be pretty hard for me to describe the feature without going too much into technical details, because that's where I usually live. It's easier for me to describe things while showing the code, so I'll try my best to do the hand-wavy explanation. So nested transaction is better described as an example, right? So for example, I have a desire to swap a token with ADA or without any ADA involvement at all. Just, for example, to multi-assets, and all I need to do is I need to create a transaction, I need to sign it in order to prove my ownership of the things that I'm to be spent, and then I need to get this transaction to some party that will match it with another transaction that does the opposite and trying to swap the tokens in the other direction. Essentially, let's say we're trying to swap Jet for Husky, I don't know, and the other party wants to swap Husky for Jet, and there's got to be some sort of service that has monetary incentive in order to put those transactions together as two sub transactions in the top level transaction. And if all of them together balance out, it can be submitted on chain, and then Ledger will validate it. And if everything balances out of all those transactions together, then it will go on chain. And three people without trust in each other can do this swapping atomically, right? So, and this in a nutshell takes care of the features like Babel fees and atomic swaps and just regular exchanges. Because, for example, if you think about decentralized exchange, where people can submit intents over to this decentralized exchange of how much they want to get for their tokens, the decentralized exchange can view this as orders, essentially, and then they can put the orders together and put them on chain. They make a little bit of money, and everybody's happy by swapping their tokens. So that's how I would describe it. Many people probably in the community have their own view. I don't really build on top of Cardano. I build tools that allow people to build on top of Cardano. So.
Who wants to complement that view? Maybe Michele, go ahead.
Okay, so the thing about bubble fees, and also one thing that I particularly care about is DEXs, is that especially DEXs that allow atomic swaps, all of these are already possible, and I would argue better with smart contract rather than using nested transactions. The thing about I don't know, we can start with DEX or bubble fees, but the thing about bubble fees is that yeah, in principle, like if you were to do it without smart contract, you could do it, but you need synchronous communication, and then the more parties, the more signatures, and the more the possibility of one person that doesn't sign it, so the whole thing falls apart. So without smart contract, it can be done, but we can do it with smart contracts, and it is, I would say, fairly simple, and it can be done asynchronous via redeemers. The transactions are extremely cheap for a smart contract transaction, and it would, regarding in size, is very comparable to what we would achieve with nested transactions, without having to force a change to the ledger and then downstream all the toolings. And if we want to go back, we cannot go back because it's now forever in the ledger. So regarding Babel fee, it's totally feasible. Regarding atomic swaps, it's even more feasible. In fact, I'm working on another protocol that will be a DEX that allow one of the problems with current DEXs is this intent thing. The intent thing is you place an order and then you hope someone is good enough to, okay, I like this person, I will execute it for you, and you can trust me. So this is what is going on with DEXs at the moment. You place an order and you trust whoever is operating the DEX to execute your order, execute your intent. The problem with intent is that we do not have on Cardano an active smart contract model. If we want to solve intents, we first need to have active smart contracts, and then maybe we can talk about nested transactions. But nested transactions are not for intent. Regarding DEXs, like in theory, everything is already possible. Like the thing with smart contract is that they restrict what the transaction can do. They impose additional rules on those transactions so that the transaction has to respect those rules. But in theory, a transaction in itself has, quote unquote, no rules. So you can do a swap, you can do an atomic swap without contracts. At the moment, just me and Raul, we agree, okay, Raul wants to sell 1 Bitcoin, I want to send 1,000 ADA. We agree together, we sign both the same transaction. I check that I receive 1 Bitcoin, and Raul checks that he's getting the ADA. We just did an atomic swap. There is no contract in all this. We have just 2 signatures. So this is
Raul,
yeah.
Raul, would you agree with the swap order with Michele and with the rest of what he has been saying?
Well, I would not swap 1 Bitcoin for 1,000 ADA, at least at these prices. But anyway, no, I think that of course what Michele is saying has some good points. What I would like to raise instead is the fact that we have seen also EVM moving to sponsor transactions in the last Petra update. So there is for sure some interest in this, and probably it's because of the intents and the smart accounts topics that are getting more relevance. The question that I have, and it's an open question because I don't know the answer, is if nested transaction comes to life, will transactions that have been signed before, or will we have backward compatibility or not, or will it be completely lost? Because if that's something, nested transaction is something more, I don't see why not. It's a very simple use case and can simplify some transactions without requiring smart contracts. Yes, please go.
I can answer to this question, and we must keep backwards compatibility. Otherwise, it would be a huge problem, right? So to answer your question simply, yes, there will be backwards compatibility, and the reason why we must keep it, because we have Plutus v1, Plutus v2, Plutus v3. There are things that are locked on chain with those scripts, and if they would be not backwards compatible, then those things would be lost forever, right? So we must keep backwards compatibility. So nested transactions, they would support also the Plutus scripts, but those would have to be now Plutus v4. So only Plutus v4 scripts would work with nested transactions. And once you look at the CDDL specification and the actual specification for the nested transactions, they only add 2 more fields to the transaction body, which are optional. So if they're not there, that means nested transactions are not being used. It's just like the transaction before. So
So
Okay.
one thing I'd like to interject here. So a lot of people talk about Babel fees as exchanging Bitcoin for ADA, but as long as you have one person holding ADA, that's fairly easily to do with a smart contract perspective, like what Michele is saying. But what happens when you want to exchange Bitcoin for Night and neither party has enough collateral to basically put things into smart contracts for doing that swap? And that's where nested transactions really thrives, because then they both basically say, I have this intent. I want to get this much Night for this much Bitcoin. And I don't have to worry about the ADA at all. And then nested transactions can then basically say, okay, who agrees with these terms and wants to put up some ADA and get some Night and Bitcoin in return basically for it. And that's really where nested transactions really comes into its fullness. If one party has ADA, you can always get that party to pay your ADA for you. In a smart contract, lock it up, and then have another party basically say, okay, I'm willing to accept that smart contract's terms to be able to get that ADA. But that's really hard to do when neither party has the collateral.
So we'll get back to you, Michele. I would like to hear from Walsh, from your experience building on Cardano. Like, do you have a use case for nested transaction? Do you think it could help you? And what are things that are still unclear for you, maybe, that would need better explanations?
Yeah, I can't say I have. I think the point that we can already do all of this if our tooling was better is the massive obstacle that we need to overcome. And I cannot see how. I think the onus, the burden of proof is on, or like evidence is on the proposers of the proposal to put forward why there is sufficient evidence that this is a change that we need. I think if we had unsafe behavior in the ledger, we would have no problem saying we should make a ledger change, because a ledger change, as you just said, like we need to have backward compatibility. So every time we make a ledger change, it's basically going to get more complicated. And it's in the brief here, right? Like we all agree, complexity, generally a bad thing. Features, good. The complexity they bring, bad, because they make our job developing stuff, being sure we know what's going to happen in a what happens if case, harder. We've already had ledger changes which are break backward compatibility. I've had a DApp break because of a ledger fix. And so I come at this very skeptical that ledger changes is needed. Can be convinced, but it's got to be like a pretty strong case. If this is functionality that we can currently support, then you have to say it's so much better or it's so important. I don't want to go off too far, but I think if we compare this to Vassal, the Vassal changes, arguably, like there were 3 changes in Vassal: reference scripts, reference inputs, and inline datums. They were basically slight augmentations of behavior that was supported before. But what they did do was massively reduce the transaction size, and that was a problem. Okay. So that was the absolute bottleneck. And that was a bottleneck for, like, I'm going to say everyone. I don't have receipts for this. I'm just going to say it was everyone. Transaction size is still the limiting factor on most of the things I build and most of the experience. Like once you've optimized for everything else, is transaction size. And Vassal massively addressed that. This, like, 1, I haven't had this problem. To be fair, I haven't worked on token swaps. 2, I think it's a misdiagnosis to look at the ecosystem and go like, oh, we're mostly doing token swaps. Yes, possibly, because that's all we can really do. We don't have, like, the tooling that we need to do this another way is better off-chain communication, which could be exposed through the tooling that we already have, but isn't. It's kind of buried. We could reuse the, like, nodes communicate. We could reuse that communication. It's too hard. The tooling is too difficult. So in my head, that's my current perspective, and I need to be convinced that these changes are just going to make things so much simpler and so much better in every respect that it's worth the added complexity they're going to bring. Just to add, like, sorry, Vassal made some fairly small changes. It managed to create a DDoS attack that we all remember, and so the change that was fixed, that broke the DApp that I developed, was because you could put a reference input and a spend as the same UTXO, and then they fixed that and that was a behavior that I depended on, and so my DApp broke. And so we made some relatively small changes that were pushed through and then had to be tweaked. All of this is complexity. So this might be totally fine. We might have got everything right, but I think our track record on making ledger changes is we're not going to get it right first time, and then there's going to be additional changes that come down the road, and all change adds complexity.
So if I summarize all your points, because there was a lot of things, make sure it's useful, make sure it's backward compatible, make sure the tooling is okay, and maybe evaluate like how we can do it before doing with alternatives. We can go back.
Sorry, I think you have to demonstrate that this is so much better, that you've exhausted the tooling problem. If you can solve it with a tooling problem, do the tooling problem first, and then demonstrate. The burden of proof is on you to demonstrate how this is so much better to do it in the ledger.
Okay. Michele, you had some point, and Raul, I saw you agree at some point. So if you want to add your point of view on this.
So there are a couple of things. I would like to come back to the example of Sam. Sam stated that it is not like currently possible to have I have Bitcoin, I have Night, and I want to do a swap because of collateral. I strongly disagree with that because the problem of collateral is that like every UTXO has to have some ADA. What is the problem that we're solving here? Every UTXO has to have some ADA because of mini-UTXO. We can solve mini-UTXO by introducing the account part of the ledger into transaction. And I understand this is something that we are working on, moving towards to, and that is fairly good because once we send an asset to a stake account, or more general now an account, we don't have to worry about mini-UTXO because the account is always there on the ledger, so it doesn't really impact the ledger size, ledger state size. So once we solve that, I would argue that the problem of collateral also goes away because you always have, in order to spend something, you have to have an UTXO, so you have to have min ADA, so you have to have some ADA, and in order to cover the fee, the collateral currently is 150% of the fee, so it's linear to the fee. The fee, like testing the Babel fees using our contracts, the fee for a simple transaction is 0.2 ADA. So that means that the minimum collateral is 0.3 ADA. This is well below the minimum UTXO for like a very simple UTXO, just ADA and some tokens. That is usually 1.3 something. And so once we introduce the account part, we can just simply do that. We have a collateral that has 1.3 ADA, that is a minimum UTXO, and then the collateral output goes to the stake account, and we have solved it. We have solved it. The collateral is not a problem. Doing an atomic swap is not a problem because as I did previously the example with me and Raul, instead of Raul, I have a smart contract. That is another party that is willing to swap with me, and we can do it based on an oracle. So it's like all doable without necessary transaction, without this added complexity, without this possibility to introduce back in the ledger, without having to push this change on the tooling downstream, and without having to permanently change it, because like every change we do to the ledger is irreversible. Either if we use it, or even worse, if we end up not using it, it's irreversible. We cannot go back on the ledger. That is one thing of the blockchain. So this is the thing about swaps. It is doable. I would argue more efficient with contracts, and I agree totally with what was said about the complexity. That is one of the major. Like I already know. I'm already like swearing for when the protocol parameters will change, and then I'll have to brute force once again the peak preview hashes don't match. So every hard fork is like this, and we keep adding complexity, and it is not sustainable in the long term. So this is my main concern.
So at some point we have to do a hard fork. I mean, we don't have to, but if we want to bring some functionality, we have to do a hard fork or a soft fork. Alexei, I saw you reacted.
So I'm not gonna produce arguments in favor or against nested transactions, but I will say it this way. I've been told about the desire of solving Babel fees about a year ago, right? So we were busy developing governance on Cardano, right? Or actually over a year, like a year and a half. That's when the work on the SIP started by my colleagues. And so far, from what I know, there are no solutions for Babel fees, right? So Michele says, you can do it that way. We can already do it, and in theory, we could have already done it, starting with Alonso when the smart contracts were introduced. But from what I know, there is no solution implemented today, and that's why I personally know about this desire for this feature, because when people want the feature and Ledger is the only way to do it, that's when I hear about it and I say, okay, this is how we can do it. So I've been told about a year and a half ago that we need to start working at some point on this feature. Today, we starting to work on it, right? Because there is no solution. I understand that people like to claim that there is a solution and it can be done already. I would love to see that. And if there is indeed a solution and I don't have to do the work, I'll be a happier man. Trust me. There is plenty of other stuff we can do in Ledger. And also, I would like to comment on Walge's point of introducing a feature, a fix that turned out to be, a bug. That's okay. It's a software development. It's a hard job. We do sometimes make mistakes, but we also are able to react. And in the next intra-era hard fork, this bug that you were talking about will be fixed and your funds will be unlocked. So there's no need to stress about it.
We can get back to that, but it's a bit of a tangent. So I would like to hear Raul. I think that was your cue earlier, saying nothing is unchained yet.
No, absolutely. As I say, Alexei, I would love to take off some of your work, but I won't, sorry. So if you go to aquarium.fluidtokens.com, you can try Babel fees right now, today on mainnet, and you can use USDM and so on. But I would point some arguments against using smart contracts, because what we are currently doing is dApps have reached to us to implement Babel fees, okay? They say, amazing, we love what you are doing, let's do it. However, these dApps not always have experience with using oracles, with using reference inputs and so on. And if having them directly on the ledger would remove this bear from them, like remove the issue to having to deal to understand what a redeemer is from them, and just to doing Babel fees like a simple atomic swap directly on chain, that would be way more better, because it would also remove some work from our side, because it's not anymore having to help them to understand the full logic. Because right now, even if you have smart contracts, Babel fees cannot be a fixed price. That's not how it works. It needs to have a dynamic price. And dynamic price means having oracles, or otherwise you have to keep updating the datum, and that's a cost in the fees. And yeah, this is my 2 cents.
Thank you, Raul. I think Michele wanted to also show another transaction with another smart contract approach that use something we could call Babel fees. Maybe you can talk a little bit about it. Are you ready, Michele?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Right? Yeah. Okay. So the thing is, we don't need oracles. A transaction can be much simpler. I have here, in case just the demo fails in live, that would not be fun. I have here a transaction that I have done in pre-prod. Here we have UTXOs. We have 2 inputs. We have 2 outputs. We have the input from a smart contract that has 10 ADA, and we have the output to smart contract that has 9.65, right? The input from the user has the mean, so mean in pre-prod, that is a token. and then part of those mean are sent to the smart contract output, and the rest is sent back. So you can see that the output ADA is even a little bit higher to the user, because the fee is 0.34, and we sent 0.35 from the contract. So effectively, what happened is that the user paid the transaction fee in mean in this case, and effectively in reality for the ledger, the transaction has been paid in ADA. The contract, there is only one contract running. It is also pretty cheap. This is under 2% of the maximum memory and steps. There is one single reference input, and that reference input is just for the reference script. In theory, this reference input could even not be here if we want the contract to be in line. So there is no oracle in all of this. We can try to add this one, pay with token. We have a transaction here. Okay, we can see that we are even receiving some ADA, and we are paying with mean. Submit. Okay, and we have a transaction hash. So we can go here. Pre-prod.
While we wait at the transaction, Raul, I think you had a question.
Yes, so basically the transaction pricing in this case is fixed, the mean price?
No. Okay, I have here the implementation. This is the contract.
Just explain. We don't need to go to the code, but
okay, it's pretty simple. The idea is that there is a provider and there is a user. The provider is the one that is actually paying the fee in ADA, and there is the user that is sending essentially the token to the provider. The provider pre-signs the redeemer, so it does not have to sign the entire transaction, and this is one other benefit, meaning that the provider cannot censor the user. Pre-signs the redeemer, and it sends just the signed redeemer to include as is in the transaction on the client side. In the signed redeemer, the provider specifies the price that he would like to be paid in order to him to send technically the other to you, or paying the fee. Yeah, and either way, what the contract cares about is that he received the token and sent at most the fee losses. So,
but I thought that the smart contracts remove the communication from the provider and the user.
The level of communication is exactly the same that what nested transaction would require. By themselves, only the change to the ledger, nested transaction require communication. That is why, in parallel to nested transaction, there is being developed in CIP 137 that is message passing, or more in general, any data viability layer. If you don't want to have communication, you have to have data viability layer. That is what nested transaction was planning for.
Or oracles.
You can also have oracles, but the solution was used exactly not to use oracles, also because it increments the execution of the contract. This contract essentially all it is doing is
I think Alexei disagreed about the exact communication channel, and if I understand well your solution, the way you communicate to process this transaction is that the provider has to broadcast a price beforehand. So the provider broadcasts a price, and then the user can use it directly without further communication. I think in the case of nested transaction, it can also go the other way. So the person can broadcast their price by signing a nested transactions, and providers can fulfill those, right?
Yeah, but in that case, it also means that the provider can censor the transaction. They can choose, no, okay, I didn't see that. Cool. But it is true. Like, we are effectively inversing the stream of information, which in my opinion is a good thing.
But nested transactions removes the whole dependence on a single provider, basically censoring the transaction.
It doesn't have to be a single provider. Once you have a data viability, like for what I see, it's very one-to-one comparison to nested transaction. If there was no data viability, you would need a single provider for nested transaction.
Let me give you a counter example where your solution doesn't work.
Sure.
I have two users. One user only holds Night. One user only holds Bitcoin. They both have a single UTXO.
Mm-hmm.
They both want to swap a portion of their Night and their Bitcoin and are willing to pay some fee to do it. There is no way to atomically collect both those users' inputs and a provider basically to cover that ADA fee without some sort of nested transaction or some sort of coordinator that then goes back to the user after creating the transaction to get both users to sign the transaction.
What problem are we solving here? Are we solving the swap between the user?
Yeah,
are we solving
between the two users?
Okay. Do they have to be two user, or can it be a user and a smart contract?
I mean, I'm talking about two users that have funds in a wallet and know absolutely nothing about what smart contracts are underlying it, but don't have enough ADA to be able to lock something up in a smart contract for one user.
There is no need to lock. There is no need to lock. The swap can happen atomically.
How do you get in a single transaction, how do you get two users to agree to do the swap with the provider without going back and asking both users for a signature?
I'm no longer talking about Babel fees here. I'm talking about a DEX. We want two users to swap their tokens. If that is the problem that we are solving, with the user don't have to interact. They have to interact. One user interacts with the contract, and the other user interacts with the contract. So those are two
then I have to do the swap for ADA and be at risk while I'm
there is no need to.
I've already agreed to do a swap with.
There is no need to swap for ADA. You just swap. I have Bitcoin and I want to receive Night. I swap Bitcoin for Night. I have Night. I want to receive Bitcoin. I swap Night for Bitcoin.
Right, but what if both users that hold the Night and the Bitcoin hold no ADA, other than their Minion TXO?
There is no other than the Minion TXO. Then we can implement we can use the collateral output to the account, and then
but they still have to hold ADA in their account.
I think Walsh has an idea about that. He wanted to say something.
It's more of a question. I'm like, why are we optimizing these people who have no stake in Cardano? Right. Also, that's for one question. And two, I don't understand. So I don't know if I've misunderstood what Babel fees are. I just understood it was using a non-ADA token to pay fees. I don't understand why it's a problem. If it was easy for, say, a stateful operator to offer this service with their own parameters and say, I will accept these tokens at this price using this Oracle or otherwise, and just said, I'll sponsor your fees. They're already running nodes online with keys. They can just offer a service that people can hit and say, I want to sell this. I want you to finish this transaction for me. That would be Babel fees, right? They would accept the native token. They would cover your ADA. They would cover your collateral.
Right, but you have to go back for a signature then, because the transaction is going to consume an input that has that ADA that you want to spend.
Sure, but
you have to go back and you have to get a signature from all the parties to be able to accept the transaction. Nested transaction.
I'm hitting a server that's running live stuff now, getting live UTXOs. Mm-hmm. It's not hard to imagine having just 100 ADA sat there on constant drip or whatever, 1,000 ADA, like disposable amounts of ADA for like the risk thing. It's not putting like millions of ADA up, just offering that service.
We don't want SPOs to do more work than they already doing for validated blocks.
I disagree entirely. Yeah. We absolutely want them to be service operators. If Cardano has anything, it's a network of decentralized service operators. Which I think we should absolutely be.
Let me put it this way: you can have as SPO as an entity do the work, but you don't want the server that is validating the blocks do more work, because that is a security concern.
Sure, can be the relay.
If you offer services that do a lot of work, then you can DDoS the whole network, right? You don't want that.
Okay, be smart about your deployment. But like that's their job, right? These people should know how to deploy. That's why there are SPOs.
But that means that they can be running the service themselves. So you can go ahead and develop the service and tell SPOs, look, here's the software that you can run on a parallel server that will communicate with the node. And if there is some support node needed from the node, sure, we can go ahead and develop it in a node. That's not a problem.
Right. So we don't need to do anything to the ledger.
Write the SIP.
No, it's not a SIP thing. It's not a ledger change.
No,
It's
a node change, right? So it doesn't have to be in an.
No, it's an external service.
Right.
Another role of the SPO. It's like
there is a little bit of miscommunication here. Okay, so Walsh, I guess Michael also is arguing about the fact that there is a service which is provided by the SPO but does not rely on the same resources that the SPO is using for the network. But I think what all this means, like this disagreement, is like probably the readiness level of this SIP is not like we disagree on a lot of stuff that are still hypothetical, I think. And so maybe we need to make some progress on like actual implementation and see how that works in practice, and if that solves solution, and if that doesn't solve that solution, we can show like how we can do it better or easier, or not even better, or harder in the current situation of the network. But so we have a lot of topics to address. I would like to see if any of you know about similar implementation on other networks, and if you'd like to talk about that, like because we have also to talk about governance later. It's a hot topic and we don't have a lot of time yet. So Raul, here you go.
Yes, no, I will be short. So I will talk with experience, meaning that on Ethereum, there is this service called Gelato. And Gelato is basically, at the end of the day, is roll up a service or bubble fees in general. We are the only chain that calls them bubble fees, by the way. If you look for bubble fees, you won't find any material in case you go for it. And what is it is, it's a sponsored transaction. So you want to pay the transaction for someone else, or you want to allow users to pay for transaction using their token. And this system, how does it work? Essentially, there are these kind of relayers that allow users to, using oracles, to determine how much is the fee in a token like USDT, USDC, and someone else is going to cover the fees, exactly in the very same way. And however, I'm not sure how this is going to change, considering that in last Ethereum update, that is the Petra one, this implementation was pushed to be directly on the ledger, and so not more anymore a service, but in the Petra you finally have a sponsored transaction directly on Ethereum network. So just to point out some use cases, there are some dApps that require users to have USDC. And sometimes user, what do? They log in, they create an account, they get USDC or USDT, whatever, from Binance, they send it there. And then as soon as they want to sign, they find out that they need Ethereum, they need Polygon. And that's, as user experience, is awful. So if we want to make this experience better, that's the reason why bubble fees are here. That's it.
Thanks, Harold. Anyone that has experience on maybe some other network? Bitcoin? All right. So we are waiting for another someone to come. Yeah, Microproof is here. Okay.
Yeah.
I think you
Can you hear
have
me?
extensive. Yeah, we can hear you well. I think you have extensive experience with like the Ethereum approach of doing these kind of things, and maybe you have a project doing something similar, right?
Yeah. So I have a project called Bullet, and the idea behind it was to provide an abstraction over the UTXOs for different accounts. And then basically the smart contract would hold your funds, and then when you would do a intention transaction, it would sum up your inputs and outputs and do basically a diff to ensure that whatever intention you signed is being followed. And then it has support for multiple intentions and things like that in the same transaction. But you're asking about Bitcoin earlier. And Bitcoin actually kind of has a sort of unique way of supporting sponsored transactions. What you can do on Bitcoin is you have these different signer modes, and the one that everyone's familiar with Cardano is you sign all inputs, all outputs. So no new inputs and no new outputs can be added. And then you also have a sign one input, but sign all outputs, so that other inputs could be added as long as the outputs are still satisfied. So you can basically leave room for someone to pay a fee and everything like that. And then finally, you have sign one input and sign one output, so that you just care about your single UTXO being sent to someone.
Sounds like nested transactions.
Yeah. So this is what exists today. Yeah.
Yeah, no, if I may, like the problem with like Bitcoin is not exactly one example that we want to take, because Bitcoin, one does not have Bluetooth, and two, most applications that we see on Bitcoin are inherently centralized because they don't have Bluetooth.
Well, hold on.
So I wouldn't take Bitcoin as an example.
They don't have Bluetooth, but they do have scripting. That's the one thing to be clear on, is like
less powerful scripting.
Yes, but funny enough, they don't actually have like, so in Cardano we have like normal public key addresses. They don't have that on Bitcoin at all. Everything is based on doing scripting. Like even the simple public key model is actually just a script that checks your public key and runs it's like 2 or 3 opcodes basically. So all their whole addresses and everything is based around the scripts. And then you have different options, like you can store a hash of the script, or you can store the entire script and the address as the address bytes. But I think the main case, like any sort of here's the thing, there's this sort of idea where it's like if you leave everything to the SPOs, then you'll get problems of MEV. And if you have these sort of providers who their only value add is that they can provide some level of fairness, then there's an argument to be made that maybe providers aren't such a bad thing, especially when you get into, well, L2s are essentially providers that provide you with an execution environment that you can do a bunch of transactions, and then they quickly resolve something in a trustless manner to the main chain. But I think as long as like the main issues we have are like, oh, one, is there sort of a decentralized way that you can see people's transactions or see people's incentives, your nested transactions, whatever you would like to call it. And then two, if everyone can see them, can you as a incentive maker or either as a intention maker or as a nested transaction maker, maybe specify a specific provider to use? Because sometimes you do want to use a specific provider, and sometimes you want to leave your intention open to the entire network to be fulfilled.
Yeah, so, the thing about like, sorry, but the thing like, if we go with nested transaction, or if we go with a provider such as the one I showed before, the thing are essentially equal. Like the thing that solves not being connected to the provider, that is my provider or that is the nested transaction provider, is that we have some data variability. Like there is no asynchronous thing. There is only third parties, and those third parties can be decentralized if we have a data variability. So the solution is data variability. It's not nested transaction.
Well, I believe it's both, really, in that they complement each other.
Meaning, yeah, they do complement each other, but we also have means to do what nested transaction would do without the complexity introduced on the ledger. So using Bluetooth, we can do what nested transaction would do.
But then Bluetooth. You're incurring a higher cost on the user, because for nested transactions, you're paying on a purely byte basis versus when you're using the Plutus contracts, now you're paying a execution budget. And
yeah, the execution, like if you go look at the transaction I shared before, is less than 2% the max transaction, very less, and in the contract is not even optimized. There are even traces in there. So
there are trade-offs
what
though,
else are we
because
talking about?
you have execution budgets, but you have less signatures, and that takes space. So there is a trade-off at some point. Data availability is also a good point. It's something needed for propagated intents here, also for
and
the
also
other scaling
Midgard
solution
and
we need.
L2s.
Yeah. Midgard, L2s. So that's also an important point. I think that needs to be discussed in general. Walj also wanted to add something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's good to look at other chains, but I think it's also like Michaela was saying about why we're not Bitcoin, and I just want to say like why we're not Ethereum. I think Cardano was designed as in somewhat to be like a reaction to some of the design choices there, and it's a super lean chain in many respects. I think we talked about like active smart contracts. Like Cardano was not designed to be your server in the way that ETH can be. It requires things to be running off chain, and we have currently we've got an ecosystem where most of the dApps run centralized servers, and therefore, like, are they decentralized? We need better tooling to build services, which is why I said SPOs should host services, not on the same node, but like they're good at running software. We can design differently that is more like Cardano, and not just look at Ethereum, they're doing it, it's fashionable, let's do the same thing.
So I kind of want to circle back here to like one of the things that Walsh brought up of why are we focusing development on people that don't have an interest in holding Cardano? And I think this comes back to a big vision thing of whether our focus of the vision should be to get more people using Cardano and understanding it and basically buying into the vision of Cardano, or whether the vision is to basically go beyond that and say that people are using Cardano without even knowing it exists. Similar to like how banks route money from like one place to another. They don't understand the underlying technology of what's happening. They just know they're sending $1 million to this person in this other country, and that person is signing for it and getting this wire transfer. So, I mean, a lot of us come from an open source background, me included, where we've been Linux evangelists for years and years and years, where it's like, oh, we got to get everyone convincing people to use Linux. But one of the things that got 90% of the people using Linux was Android, where most people have no idea they're using Linux on a daily basis. And now it's like one of the most popular platforms to build applications on in the entire world.
I agree. Like, I agree. We like want people to have Cardano because they buy the vision of Cardano, so they don't necessarily need to know they are using Cardano. Regardless, there is a technical aspect to it. So if they are using Cardano, even without knowing it, they will have Cardano because there is the limit. And that is a technical problem. Like, it's not like you can opt out. I don't know what solution you are planning for it, but there is MiniXO, and maybe you are planning for, I don't know. Okay, I provide the MiniXO for you, and then you technically just have Bitcoin or whatever token you want to have. Then what happens in that case is that you are subject to risk, so you are actually offering a service by quote unquote renting your ADA to cover MiniXO. So you are taking the risk if you are offering that service. So technically speaking, like only from a technical perspective, this is a not problem because you have to have ADA. It's yours, it's not yours, don't care. The ledger doesn't care. It's that there is some ADA, so there is no problem.
There is ADA involved, and there is ADA in a lot of places, like you say, like MiniXO, like the fees, and for sure, if you want to have a great user experience, like Sam said, like people don't need to know where it's running from. You have a lot of places to cover, and I think it will be interesting to see if any of these approaches can cover all those situations to make sure that it's really seamless for all the users, or if it doesn't, and if it doesn't, what can we change and what can we do moving forward to improve that situation? So I would really like if some of those implementation, like try to, I don't know, maybe get a grant to go, I don't know, maybe it can go to Catalyst or something like that to make something like really useful to test those ideas. And talking about Catalyst and funding, we have another important subject, which is we are now in the era of Voltaire. So even if this is a very technical discussion about features on the ledger, those features on the ledgers need to be introduced with a hard fork. And now hard fork needs the decision from 3 parties, the Constitutional Committee, the SPOs, and the DREPs. So it's a new era, and I guess it's going to be a new way to dealing with hard forks. So I would like to hear about that aspect. Maybe Sam, you are well positioned to talk us through what you think and how IO is going to engage that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, anything that's developed in the ledger, there has to be buy-in for it. You can't just sneak something in the ledger and say, hey, this is what everyone's forking to, and we're doing it on day X. Get ready or you're screwed. You now have very, very high thresholds of what SPOs have to assent to, what DREPs have to assent to, and then it has to be according to the Constitution, as well as a constitutional committee basically will assent to. So it's not like IO basically just says, hey, we're going to develop this thing and everyone has to accept it. I mean, there's going to be a lot of discussion. And I mean, if we don't have these roundtable discussions up front and get the community's buy-in on these things, we're just going to develop a whole bunch of code for a year, put forward the hard fork proposal, and then get 10% yes, and the thing dies and have to start all over again, or have some sort of compromise and whatnot to get it in or whatnot. So, I mean, there's a whole governance piece here that's blocking one entity from basically deciding that they're going to develop things in this way. And that's not just IO. I mean, now you have the Amaru node, you have Michele's node coming up, the TypeScript one. You have the Go node, you have the Scala node, you have the C++ node. All these new node implementations are in the same boat. They have to make sure they have buy-in through the SIP process, through discussions like this. Otherwise, let's develop a whole bunch of stuff that never gets anywhere.
Yep, Michele, you want to add something?
Yeah, regarding like voting hard forks, like when I first raised the issue of nested transaction and how, in my opinion, they are not the best of the system, I said, okay, who voted for this? Why are we pursuing this? And I was answered, okay, we had this IOG budget, and in that budget there was nested transaction, and so people voted for it. And in that budget, there are a lot of things that IOG does very good. Like there are good choices made by IOG. Nested transaction is the only one that I don't like. What do? I don't vote for IOG, all the good stuff, because there is nested transaction. The same goes with hard forks. In hard forks, there will be a bunch of changes to the ledger that are packed together, and I say, this is what we're going to. 90% I like. There is nested transaction that I really don't like. And then what I have to do, I block the entire change of the 90% that is good. So
Alexei,
we will never have a positive vote.
What's your point on that? Is there a technical solution to this political problem? Like,
so the proposal that contained a lot of stuff, as Michael was saying, there's no need to do anything technical. You can just split up a proposal in a bunch of smaller proposals and let people vote for them. So it will introduce a lot more work for people, right? Because now SPOs and Constitutional Committee members and DREPs, they need to vote for the many proposals instead of one. So that is the only problem. But I don't see any need to interject technically into this. Obviously, there can be some features developed to create proposals that span multiple, I don't know, years, for example, and if there is a desire to do that, I would like somebody to create a SIP and specify how they would like that to be behavior be different from today, and we can implement it, right? I don't see any technical need to interject from our side today. Now, the fact that Michele doesn't like it, that's where the governance comes in, right? Not everybody has to agree. But if the majority agrees, that's a good indicator to us that it is a good feature and to implement. And that's why the governance works, right? Sometimes people can be, against what being proposed, and that's okay, right? Because the future will show, the nested transactions, if it gets implemented, if it really is a good feature or not. I mean, if you have really strong argument and the whole community supports this argument that this is a bad feature, obviously we're not going to implement it, right? But I would love personally to see an alternative solution that works, right? That's if there is something and community is happy with it, then we have less work to do and we will work on other things that people also want. So it's a balance that needs to be struck.
Yeah,
I think one thing that has come about in this conversation and in the Ledger working groups is basically the philosophical argument related to Babel fees, of whether Babel fees should be only available for smart contracts or whether wallet keys and native scripts should be first-class citizens to be able to participate in Babel fees. And there's also, with that, when you have them as first-class citizens of it, that means multiple parties, like you could have some 100, if you have the transaction size large enough. Obviously, you're not going to get that many in with the current parameters and whatnot. But you can have multiple parties come forward with all these inputs and only have one person hold data of those 50 people to be able to satisfy all those sub-transactions.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
but let's stay focused on the governance stuff. For
I
now.
wanted to say one more thing
yeah.
about nested transactions real quick, which is
okay. One last
thing. Sorry, Michele. I'll give you a chance to. But the one other feature that's not really touched on is the main focus is on having coordination between different parties, and then having these nested transactions act as the sort of intention medium. But the other part is it can change how a smart contract is written from the ground up. And what I mean is, I remember talking with George like 2 or 3 years ago from Anastasia Labs, where the idea is, rather than the Plutus script context providing all the inputs, all the outputs for a transaction, some of which you don't care about, or other certificates, having a Plutus script execute in this sort of nested transaction environment where you're only validating on the things you actually care about, being the inputs, outputs, or maybe the mints or whatever that are related specifically to your smart contract, kind of gives you this extra, I would say, efficiency in like.
But there is nothing preventing us to do it now.
But now you have the whole list, and you have to iterate through the list or convert the list in a way.
Our DT is to sort a list and pass an index. Like it's not like sorting list is a famous computer science problem.
I see you reacting. What's your?
I'm talking about, like, let's say you want to go over all the inputs to ensure that, or all the inputs that you as a smart contract have access to make sure that any inputs with a specific address are being properly validated. So you have some sort of
filtering
logic where the spending script depends on like a withdrawal script, for instance. And now the withdrawal script has to go over all the inputs. But if the withdrawal script's context is just a nested transaction, well, now you have significantly reduced the complexity and the cost of what it has to iterate over. Now it can assume that all the inputs are script related.
I disagree. I disagree because
okay.
because Ledger, like it is feel long ago proposed to have input ordering on the script context. That is one of the big mistakes. Only for the inputs, but already for the outputs, those are ordered according to the off-chain and not to some random ordering choice. So
sure, even if you can order them, you still have to check the other inputs.
So
no,
we,
you don't.
we are
Sure.
really going on tangent here on how to make script efficient.
Okay, can I just like to conclude? You only need to pass an index in the redeemer, and then you drop all the inputs, output, whatever you want before, and you have all the inputs, and you have maybe the length of the output that you expect, and you only validate those. So there is nothing preventing it, and it's fairly cheap to drop things.
Michele and
Yeah.
Micro, I know it's a passionate debate, like what's available in Plutus and what's efficient, not, especially with a room full of engineers like today. But I would like to keep some time for also questions and from the audience. So I know we didn't mention it too much before, but you can ask your question. We are seeing questions from X and from YouTube. I don't think there really is a question yet. We saw some highs. Hi B, hi, a lot of people.
Hi.
So maybe more granular hard fork. So yeah, that's a good remark and a good question.
I can answer that.
Yeah, Alexei.
So you can have smaller hard forks, which are intra-era hard forks, which introduce smaller features. But a bigger feature requires a new era, right? And creating a new era is has quite a bit of overhead in terms of development. So whenever we create a new era, we'd like to bundle as many features as we possibly can. That's why it's a bit harder. I mean, it's not harder, right? It's possible to create like, one tiny small feature, new era, okay, go. But it does create quite a bit of overhead because for every era you need to have a new Plutus version. We have to propagate the whole era through all of the components. So there is quite a bit of overhead if you would like to go this route of more granular hard forks.
I can also
and
just
the
add
overhead as well for
Yeah.
users too.
Yeah.
Sorry, Walsh, I didn't mean to.
No, I was going to say the same point, right? Like the more different things there are, the more things I have to think about. I mean, maybe the context where that's my problem is quite restricted, but I still have to go back and be like, was that the point where this other thing existed, but not the other thing? So fewer changes generally better, unless like there's really compelling use case.
But on the flip side of that, even if there's a very small change, like if only nested transactions goes into it, and you're adjusting to make nested transactions work, so you have a new Plutus v4 version, you have a new script context, you have new protocol parameters, all these things that go into a hard fork. You as a user have a lot of changes to address. So if you have, and I know this is not possible from a development speed perspective, but let's assume a world where it is, where you have 10 new eras in a year. Mm-hmm. Now you have to do that work 10 times of redoing the script context, all those pieces for every new era you do. So you end up having to do a whole lot more work with 10 features in a year introduced in separate hard forks than with one hard fork with 10 features.
Yeah.
One solution, if I may, is just to have one info action for every feature that we want. So one info action, and then in the hard fork proposal, only the info action, only the features described in the info action that have passed are included. So we have one big hard fork, but we only have the features that have the majority. And I think
it assumes that you already implemented it, right? It assumes that you already have the implementation if you for goes into info actions.
I mean, except if the info action comes a long time before, so that you have time to pick and choose. But it assumes that we go with a similar model that what we have been doing for the budget, and now everyone is saying it's a bad idea to do first all the budget and then the treasury withdrawals, because there are discrepancy between the steps, there are changes in the plans, and people, even if they accept the budget phase, maybe they don't accept the treasury. What happened here? Like if you accept the info action, then you don't accept the actual upgrades, like it can be an issue too. So yeah, maybe it's not that much of a good idea to separate the slip into two.
And one more important point.
Thousands of info actions.
One more important point I would like to make is info actions today, they do not affect the ledger at all. So there is no mechanism today that we have that info action would have some sort of impact on.
Well, we can make it unconstitutional to not respect the info action.
No, I mean programmatically, info action has no impact on the ledger, right? So by definition, it cannot have impact on any other proposal.
We can have a constitutional committee member making sure that an info action has passed. You have to submit an artwork that respects that info action, otherwise it's unconstitutional.
Did you run it by them?
No, you'd have to alter the Constitution. There'd have to be a constitutional amendment for it, and I do not think there'd be a lot of popularity to be able to get that constitutional amendment passed because of the additional work on the DREPs and the CC.
Yeah. So here's kind of the question. What if funding is allocated in advance? So you do a treasury withdrawal directly for some for some work that'll be done for a hard fork, right? And then it goes to a smart contract, and then there's a vote on it. I mean, this goes back to then DREPs or whatever can vote on the actual smart contract for the release of those funds for the work that's done. But kind of already have that with like committees and everything. So
I don't think anyone in the community would be willing to basically lock up funds at risk for something that got approved to be built and then not get the money because people didn't approve to put in a hard fork 2 years later.
Let's flip it in that rather than approving, it would have to be a majority vote to reject instead.
I like having my salary. I would like to get paid regardless because I did the work.
Yeah.
So it's the way it is set up today.
That's why I say majority reject.
It sort of makes sense already, right? So we had a proposal. It has been voted on. It has been approved. Okay, that we are safe to start working because we know that we're gonna get paid. If we don't finish the work, if we don't do the work, that's the only reason why people shouldn't get paid, and that's fair to me. And so there's no need to change today, from what I can see. Yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
Could you walk us through the steps that happens today for hard fork, and like from IOG to the new nodes to the SPOs? How is it deployed to the network, and is it going to be impacted with the how you work on this?
So the Conway era and the Voltaire era, it's the governance, minimal viable governance that was introduced. We can obviously iterate on it, and in the future we can improve things. But the way it works today is, you create a proposal for the budget, people vote on it because it contains all the maintenance stuff that you need to do, all the new features, be it nested transactions, be it other SIBs that people have written. And as long as majority votes on it, it means we can go ahead and implement and do the work, do the actual work. But the money goes through the intersect, through the nonprofit organization. So we have all the due diligence that could we possibly thought of, right? The constitutional committee members, then in DREPs, then SPOs, and then also intersect that guards the money. And it's not necessarily that only IRG can do the work. It was set up in such a way that other companies out there can also contribute and do the work. And then once the work is done, and all the testing is done, and all the community testing is done on the test nets, and everybody is happy with the work that has been implemented, we can go and do the hard fork on mainnet. So we make a release of the node that is capable of handling the hard fork, capable of handling the new era, which is also the process that have been tested on all the test nets, right? It works exactly the same way. Then on mainnet, we create intersect creates a proposal of flipping the switch of going into the new era, the protocol update, and people vote on it. If there is enough votes, all the SPOs have upgraded. By definition, they're not going to vote if they haven't upgraded, so that vote is not going to be counted. So if majority have voted, then in one particular moment, everybody upgrades to this new version, and we can use the features that we have been working for a year or so. That's in a nutshell how it works.
Okay. Anyone has final notes on the subject? Final thoughts?
Yeah.
I would like to make a comment about Michele, and I love that he is so passionate about the subject. And one thing from my experience, I would like to disagree with you personally, is how you go about saying it's so simple, it can be already done. It's it only requires just this, right? In my
experience, the proof is in the work, right?
Yeah, in my experience, it's not that easy. Life is not that easy in blockchain space, and there is a lot of work that needs to be done. That's why, for example, nested transactions, it will take us about a year to implement because it's not an easy feature. So I'm always very skeptical when people make bold claims, and I love when those claims come to fruition, and I wish you all the best to try to implement it, and if it works out, that's great. But in reality, I've seen that it requires quite a bit of work, and that's my team that does. For example, governance was a big milestone for us, and we've worked for about 2 years on it. It was very hard work, dedication of many people. But I've heard people saying before we even started working, "Oh, governance is easy. All you got to do is just submit a couple of votes and everything is done. Come on, how hard can it be?" So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's never that easy. I generally underestimate the complexity of things. It is something that I do a lot. So when I say it is easy, I'm also fooling myself. I probably do that on purpose, unconsciously, subconsciously. I don't know. So I know. Telling myself that things are easy pushes me to do other things. And other things is our exchange stuff. So it's not like sometimes people get offended when I say, okay, it's easy, because they assume, oh, okay, I'm calling them stupid. No. No. I'm the opinion nobody's stupid. I'm just in the opinion that we don't need to stress ourselves. Oh, this is too difficult. I cannot never do it. No, it's just a psychological thing. It's technical implementation at the end. So there is nothing easy. There is nothing hard. It's just code. That's it.
Yes, exactly. Micro, I see you unmute.
Yeah.
You want to say something?
I just say I've worked on some of this stuff, so that's why I see the benefits of nested transactions directly. As in, I know today exactly how I would write my smart contracts differently if they existed, and that's why for me it's the idea is beautiful, because I see the sort of direct benefits and sort of the simplifications, at least, that I can make to more complex logic I had to do in the past. And then there's also updates with the Plutus version, that every time the Plutus version gets updated, there's new features that become available. So then I often want to go back and like rewrite a lot of things that were more complex in the simpler things. Like Fortuna, for instance, I had to do some of the bitwise operations we now have by hand before they were existing. So
yeah, no, like I agree. Like Bluetooth features usually are good, unless you have to update a BPU actually to match, but usually are good. Ledger features are more drastic, and I would agree. I understand why would you say smart contract would be simpler. On the other hand, I would say that it's just how you design things, and I don't see that much of an improvement to justify a ledger change. If it was a Bluetooth change, then yeah, cool, because Bluetooth at the end is something on top, quote unquote, of the ledger. But in my opinion, it doesn't justify something as big as a ledger change.
Walsh, do you have any final words or so? And maybe we'll finish with Sam.
I don't know. I think we just rejoin the argument halfway through. I really want to see the SIP embellished with evidence that the alternatives don't meet the criteria. At the moment, there's just 2 lines that says people do atomic swaps, therefore we should put them in the ledger. And I think that is the burden of proof remains. Some people might go obvious. I don't currently see it. If there is interest in like exploring alternative approaches, yeah, they need to be. I guess there needs to be some kind of funding because they're, as just discussed, they're not trivial. I think I would say they were easy in the sense of they don't look like they have original research, right? All of the tooling is currently like all of the way these things would work. We kind of think we already know. It just requires work to actually just do it.
Mm-hmm. Aren't you afraid to stall progress with this approach? Because you now preventing the feature from being developed just because somebody needs to do more research and
no, not at all. Like I think for the moment it looks like this is a solution looking like for a problem is too much, but like it's very use case specific, and from my experience it's not my problem. And so I'm aware that I have that context, that I haven't tried to do token swaps, so this isn't my problem. But like I have loads of problems, none of them are this.
Mm-hmm.
That's my context. And so I think if you put this in, it definitely looks like this could then become my problem because it's more complexity. So you're adding more complexity, you're not solving my problems, I've got loads. I would really like to like either justify that they're someone's problems and I can relate, and I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, I can see why this is like 10x better than what we've got. And it cannot be done with current, like just improving tooling, not ledger changes. Or like solve my actual problems, and I'll be like, yeah, thank you so much.
So all alternative solutions involve somebody else doing the work. It would be not the core team that would be doing the work, right? Because all the other solutions that have been proposed are smart contracts. So it would be great if the community stepped up and did the research if they can do better, right? If they
but
can
it's not
do it
my
better.
Problem. I'm trying to solve problems that are my problem.
It is my problem
now.
For Bullet.
It is going to happen. So. There are a lot of people interested in this. There is Raul who had to go before, so thank you, Raul. Yeah. And there are Michele. There is a lot of people that are trying to do it to make a point, I guess.
Yeah.
Sam, we can end with your.
Yeah. So I think yes, there is some very good point in that. Basically, this isn't a problem I need to solve. Maybe there might be some way it solves your problem. I don't necessarily see how it makes anything more complex for you. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but I just don't see the additional complexity to the user that doesn't want to use them. Because it's completely reverse compatible. No one's forced to use them. It basically just allows the user to put an intent on a partial of a transaction and let that intent be fulfilled. But yeah, I think more people need to speak up, like Microproofs and other people in the community about the problems it solves. Like I know Andrew Westberg was really big little less than a year ago saying that of everything in the vision, the only thing he cared about was nested transactions, or at the time, I think it was called validation zones. Yeah, I mean, we should see more people in the community like speak up and basically say, yes, this solves my problem and this is why. And it would be really horrible if we developed this and it was never used. But I mean, that's not what I've gotten from a non-technical perspective of going to like the Future of Cardano workshops. Everyone's really interested in this and how this can kind of abstract away the need for ADA, especially the non-technical people that don't understand how things work under the hood. And I just would like to see more conversation in that regard of like, who wants this feature, who doesn't want this feature, and why is there an opposition to the feature? And if there is an opposition because it creates more complexity for you, how is it creating more complexity for you?
Well, I could chime in. I could chime in. I know we're closing.
I think we should wrap up, Michele.
Yeah,
we should wrap up. There has been a lot of great conversation. I mean, definitely, Alexei, I think you shouldn't have given any date. Like you said, it needs a year. So now you are bound to do it in a year.
That's in a proposal.
Okay, but it means like we have time to experiment and to prove our points, whether it's on the nested transaction side, on the scripting side, on the manual doing on your server side, to show like we can get better user experience if it's one of the problems that is solved by this subject, especially Babel fees, swap something else. Yeah, so it was a pleasure having you all on this call. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Raul, also who had to go before. And I think we can wrap up. I'm not sure how we do that. We didn't actually rehearse that. Denisio and remain okay. So we'll remain here and yeah, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you for
thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. This was a great conversation. I look forward to more in the future.
Likewise. And please come to the Ledger Working Group to discuss tested transactions if you care about it. Show off your best solution and convince us that we don't need to implement it. I'll love that.